5:17 local time, Northern Arabian Sea. Inside the Combat Information Center of a US Navy destroyer, the space is nearly dark, lit only by the glow of radar screens and sonar displays. Operators sit fixed at their consoles, headsets pressed close, eyes locked on their instruments. The ship moves at a steady transit speed, one part of a three-vessel formation crossing calm, open water. Then the sonar operator hears something. A faint metallic rhythm comes through his headphones. It is not random. It is not marine life. It is mechanical. Transient contact, bearing 071. He leans closer, isolating the sound through the ship's towed array sonar. Far behind the destroyer, hundreds of meters of sensitive hydrophones trail silently through the water, listening to every sound carried by the sea. The signal returns. 2 clear rotations. Twin propeller blades moving slowly somewhere in deep water. Possible submarine screw noise, the operator reports. No one raises their voice. In the CIC, calm is part of the process. Seconds later, the acoustic signature becomes sharper. The contact is not drifting with the current. It is not moving like civilian traffic. Its rhythm is controlled, steady, and intentional. Estimated distance, 9 nautical miles. Depth unknown. The tactical display officer marks the contact on the screen. Track Sierra 2-1. Another officer checks the nearby vessel display. No merchant ship matches that bearing. No friendly submarine is scheduled to operate in this sector. On the bridge, the destroyer's captain receives the update. The course remains steady. Speed increases slightly. The 2 other US warships in the formation, a guided missile cruiser and a second destroyer, receive the same data link update through the fleet tactical network. Within seconds, the formation tightens. 3 ships shift quietly across the open water, adjusting their spacing without any visible signal. 5:18. The sonar operator raises his hand again. A second acoustic contact. Another set of propeller tones appears on the spectrum analyzer. The pitch is slightly different. The rotation is a little faster. 2 submarines. The Combat Information Center becomes even quieter. No alarms, no sudden movement. Only keyboards, low voices, and short, precise reports. Contact 2, bearing 085. The officer of the deck orders an active sonar pulse. The destroyer's hull-mounted sonar sends a strong ping through the water, spreading outward across the sea. For a moment, the ocean answers. An echo returns. A long shape beneath the surface. Depth approximately 120 meters. Submarine confirmed. The classification officer studies the acoustic profile. 5-blade propeller pattern. Irregular shaft harmonics. Then another faint signal appears on the sonar display. Not a propeller. A mechanical movement. Short, metallic. The sonar operator narrows the frequency filter. The sound repeats. A hollow sliding noise, followed by a brief hydraulic pulse. His expression changes. Tube door opening. For half a second, no one speaks. Everyone in the room understands what that sound means. Somewhere below the surface, a submarine has opened a torpedo tube. The tactical officer marks the estimated submarine position on the map. Distance, 8 nautical miles. Bearing holding steady. A new order moves quietly through the CIC. Condition 3. Set readiness. Across the ship, sailors move to their assigned stations. Systems come online. The destroyer's electronic warfare suite begins scanning for signals. Long-range optical cameras rotate toward the horizon. On the bridge, the captain studies the tactical display. Still no visual contact, only sound. 5:19. The sonar operator suddenly sits upright. A sharp burst of cavitation floods his headset. A fast spinning propeller. Rapid acceleration. Launch detected. Every screen in the Combat Information Center updates at once. A narrow acoustic trail cuts through the water toward the formation. speed increasing, 40 knots. Then another signal appears, and another. 3 separate cavitation signatures, 3 torpedoes, 3 different vectors. All 3 tracks are moving toward the American ships. The tactical officer reacts immediately. "Confirm torpedoes in the water." "Confirmed." The warning passes across the formation's secure data link in seconds.
Now all 3 US warships know what is moving beneath the surface. From the bridge, the captain's voice comes through steady and controlled. "Helm, hard starboard! Deploy countermeasures!" Outside, the destroyer begins a sharp turn. Thousands of tons of steel carve across the water, leaving a broad white wake behind the stern. A small device drops into the sea and trails behind the ship on a cable. It is an acoustic decoy built to imitate the sound of a full-size warship and draw the torpedo away from its real target. Inside the Combat Information Center, the sonar operator watches the incoming tracks closing on the display. 5 nautical miles. 4. 3. Below the surface of the Arabian Sea, 3 torpedoes move through the dark water at high speed. And somewhere deeper in the distance, the submarine that launched them is already changing course. 5:20 local time. Inside the Combat Information Center, the sonar screen is filled with movement. 3 narrow acoustic trails cut across the display, each one fast, each one closing in on the American formation. The cavitation signatures are now unmistakable, high-speed torpedoes moving through the water column. The sonar operator reports in a calm voice. 3 torpedoes confirmed. Bearings 073, 082, 090. Each track is moving toward a different ship. The destroyer continues its evasive turn, engines working harder as the helm holds sharply to starboard. In the center of the formation, the cruiser increases speed. The third ship angles away, widening the distance between the vessels. The formation separates with purpose. 3 ships, 3 targets, 3 evasive courses. On the sonar screen, the range markers drop quickly. 5 nautical miles. 4. The tactical officer calculates the closing speed. 45 knots. At that speed, the torpedoes will reach the formation within minutes. Deploy Nixie. At the stern of the destroyer, a small cylindrical countermeasure slips into the sea and disappears beneath the surface. A cable streams out behind it as the device begins transmitting a strong acoustic signal. A false ship, louder than the real one. Inside the CIC, the sonar operator watches the first torpedo adjust course. The track shifts slightly, then more clearly. It bends away from the destroyer's hull. It is following the decoy. 1 torpedo diverted, the operator reports. But the other 2 continue straight. On board the cruiser, the captain receives the update on his tactical display. 2 torpedoes are still closing on separate ships. Distance, 3 nautical miles. The cruiser accelerates to flank speed, engines driving harder as the large hull begins a tight, evasive maneuver. On the flight deck, sailors brace themselves as the ship leans into the turn. Below the waterline, the torpedoes continue moving, each one guided by sound, each one following the rhythm of rotating propellers, each one listening. Inside the destroyer's CIC, another operator launches a second acoustic countermeasure. A new decoy splashes into the water and begins broadcasting another artificial signature through the sea. Seconds pass. On the sonar display, the second torpedo starts to drift. For a brief moment, its track becomes uncertain, as if its guidance system is comparing 2 different sound sources. Then the line bends sharply. The torpedo turns away from the warship and heads toward the new decoy. Second torpedo diverted. But the third torpedo does not change course. Its track remains steady. It is still moving directly toward the cruiser. Distance now under 2 nautical miles. The cruiser holds its hard turn, engines push to maximum output. Water rushes along the cruiser's hull as the ship cuts sharply across the torpedo's predicted path.
Inside the cruiser's own combat information center, the sonar team watches the fast-moving contact closing in. Range 1.8 miles. The bridge stays quiet, except for navigation calls. Helm corrections, engine commands. The captain keeps his eyes on the tactical display. At this point, timing is everything. Deploy the decoy too early, and the torpedo may ignore it. Deploy it too late, and there may be no second chance. Deploy second decoy! From the cruiser's stern, another acoustic countermeasure drops into the water and begins transmitting. The device trails behind the ship, sending out a powerful imitation of a warship's propeller signature. The torpedo keeps coming. 1 mile, 800 yards, 700. Then the sonar operator sees the first sign of change. The track begins to waver. For a brief moment, the torpedo's guidance system appears to search the water around it, comparing the real ship against the false signal behind it. Then the line shifts. Slowly at first, then decisively. The torpedo turns away from the cruiser and moves toward the decoy. 5 seconds later, the sea bursts upward behind the cruiser's stern. A heavy underwater detonation sends a column of white water into the air. The pressure wave spreads across the surface, while pieces of the decoy scatter across the waves. Inside the CIC, no one cheers. They keep listening. Because in moments like this, one contact is never enough to assume the danger has passed. Seconds later, the first diverted torpedo reaches the destroyer's decoy. Another deep impact rolls beneath the surface. Then the second follows. 3 detonations, 3 incoming threats neutralized. For a brief moment, the sea falls quiet again. But the tactical officer knows the most dangerous part of the encounter may still be ahead. The submarine that launched them is still somewhere below, and now it knows exactly where the American ships are. 5:22 local time. Above the formation, the ocean suddenly becomes active with movement. On the flight deck of the lead destroyer, a gray MH-60R Seahawk helicopter is already powered up, its twin engines running at full strength. Deck crew crouch low against the rotor wash as the aircraft rises from the deck and climbs into the humid morning air. Inside the cockpit, the pilots level the helicopter at 200 feet above the water. The mission is clear: find the submarine. Behind them, the destroyer's flight deck quickly grows smaller as the Seahawk accelerates toward the suspected launch point. In the rear of the aircraft, the sensor operator brings the onboard acoustic processor online and connects directly with the destroyer's sonar network. Below the helicopter, the sea looks calm, but beneath that calm surface, something is moving. The Seahawk banks left and begins deploying sonobuoys. One after another, small cylindrical devices drop from the helicopter's dispenser racks and splash into the water. Each buoy releases a hydrophone below the surface, becoming part of a new underwater listening network. Within seconds, acoustic data starts streaming back to the aircraft. A grid begins to form, each buoy listening, each buoy transmitting. The operator studies the signals moving across his screen. Hundreds of tiny frequency spikes appear as the system filters out ocean noise, marine life, and distant civilian traffic. Then one signal stands out: low frequency, metallic, rotating machinery. Contact, the operator says quietly. Bearing 112. The submarine is moving again, and this time, it is not moving slowly. Beneath the surface, the Iranian submarine descends deeper into the water column, engines pushing harder as it tries to slip away from the area. The Seahawk adjusts course immediately. The helicopter drops slightly lower, nose angled toward the new bearing. More sonobuoys fall into the sea, expanding the listening net. The pattern begins to close around the suspected position of the submarine. Within moments, the acoustic picture becomes clearer. The submarine is moving at 15 knots, Depth approximately 150 meters. Course away from the American formation. The submarine commander has already fired. Now he is trying to escape. Inside the helicopter, the sensor operator switches the system to active mode. One of the sonobuoys sends a sharp sonar pulse into the dark water below. Seconds later, the echo comes back. A long steel shape beneath the surface. A confirmed underwater contact. The acoustic processor verifies it. Target classified, submarine. The pilots exchange a brief look, but neither of them speaks. They both know what comes next. The Seahawk settles into a steady hover 200 feet above the ocean. Beneath the fuselage, the weapons bay doors slide open. Inside is a single Mark 54 lightweight torpedo. Compact, fast, built specifically for submarine tracking. The pilot holds the helicopter steady while the sensor operator confirms the firing solution.
The target is still moving, still trying to get away. But it is not moving fast enough. 12 miles away, the 3 American warships continue maneuvering across the sea. Their sonar arrays remain active, searching the surrounding water for any additional contacts. Inside the destroyer CIC, the tactical officer watches the helicopter's data feed appear on his screen. The Seahawk has the contact. Now the only question is whether the submarine knows it has been found. Above the water, the helicopter banks into position. The pilot lines up the aircraft along the submarine's predicted path below. The sensor operator speaks over the intercom. Solution steady. Target depth 150 meters. A green light appears on the weapons panel. The helicopter holds steady for one final moment. Then the release switch is pressed. The Mark 54 drops from the Seahawk and falls through the air. A second later, it hits the surface with a heavy splash and disappears into the sea. For a few seconds, there is only silence. Then the torpedo's engine comes alive underwater. Its propeller begins turning. Its guidance system activates. The search pattern begins. Beneath the ocean surface, 2 machines are now moving through the darkness. One escaping, one closing in. Inside the Seahawk, the acoustic display lights up as the torpedo's onboard sonar starts scanning for the target. The submarine is still running, but the distance is shrinking fast. Deep below, the pursuit has begun. 5:24 local time. Under the surface of the Arabian Sea, the Mark 54 moves through the dark water at high speed. Its onboard sonar begins searching immediately, sending quick acoustic pulses into the surrounding sea. The signals travel through layers of colder and warmer water, then return to the torpedo's receiver. For several seconds, it detects nothing. Only distant propeller noise from the American ships above. Then a stronger echo appears. A metallic hull, moving. The torpedo's guidance computer adjusts course a few degrees to port. Speed increases. The system has found a contact. Overhead, inside the MH-60R Seahawk, the sensor operator watches the acoustic data moving across his screen. Through the nearby sonobuoys, the helicopter's processors are receiving the torpedo's transmissions. The signal is faint, but clear enough. The torpedo has acquired something. Below them, the Iranian submarine continues its escape. The commander has taken the vessel deeper, pushing toward a lower thermal layer, where changes in water temperature can bend and distort sonar signals. The engines are running harder now, as the submarine angles away from the American formation. But more speed means more noise. And in the ocean, noise travels far. The Seahawk pilot banks slightly, keeping the contact area centered beneath the aircraft. Target still moving, the sensor operator reports. Depth approximately 160 meters. Below the surface, the torpedo continues to close the distance. Inside the submarine, warning tones begin to sound. The sonar operator has detected a new contact behind them. Fast, high frequency, closing rapidly. Torpedo in the water, he reports to the control room. The submarine commander reacts immediately. Deploy countermeasures. From the rear of the submarine, a defensive acoustic decoy launches into the water. The device begins transmitting a powerful artificial signature, designed to pull the incoming torpedo away from the submarine's true position. At the same time, the submarine begins a sharp, evasive maneuver. Ballast shifts, the hull angles downward, the vessel dives deeper. 180 meters, then 200. Inside the Seahawk, the acoustic display suddenly becomes crowded with signals. Two sound sources now appear in the water. One strong, one artificial. The torpedo's onboard computer begins sorting through them, comparing frequencies, engine harmonics, and propeller patterns. For a moment, the track hesitates. Then it decides. The torpedo turns hard to starboard. It ignores the decoy. The real submarine is still louder, still moving, still trying to get away. Inside the submarine, the sonar operator hears the change immediately. The torpedo is still tracking us. The commander grips the edge of the control console. Full power! The submarine's engines surge. The vessel tries to outrun the incoming threat, but the advantage is no longer on its side. The Mark 54 accelerates again. The distance closes fast. 800 meters. 600. Inside the Seahawk, the crew remains silent. They watch the acoustic data update in real time as the contact lines move closer together on the display. Below them, two machines race through deep water. 500 meters. 400. Inside the submarine, the crew braces as the commander orders another hard turn. But the torpedo adjusts again. Its guidance system corrects instantly. 300 meters. 200. For a brief moment, the acoustic signal spikes across every sonar buoy in the area. Then the ocean surges. A powerful underwater shockwave expands through the water column as the Mark 54 reaches its target area. A burst of gas and debris rises from the depths, spreading outward through the sea. Above the surface, the Seahawk crew sees the water swell upward. A white column of bubbles climbs toward the daylight. Dark fragments briefly break the surface before slipping back beneath the waves. Inside the helicopter, the acoustic screens suddenly fall quiet. The steady propeller rhythm that had filled the spectrum for the past several minutes is gone. Only fading echoes remain. The sensor operator studies the display carefully. No propulsion noise, no movement, no return signal. He keys his microphone. Contact lost. Possible submarine neutralization. Below them, the sea slowly returns to calm. But the Seahawk keeps circling overhead. Because in submarine warfare, silence can mean many things. And the ocean is still listening. 5:26 local time. The Arabian Sea grows quiet again. From 200 feet above the water, the MH-60R Seahawk continues its slow orbit over the impact area. Below the helicopter, a wide circle of disturbed water spreads outward from the point where the underwater shockwave occurred moments earlier. A column of air bubbles rises from the depths, then fades. Inside the helicopter, the sensor operator studies the acoustic feed coming through the sonar buoy network. Dozens of hydrophones remain suspended beneath the surface, listening carefully to every movement in the water column. For several seconds, there is nothing. No propeller rhythm, no mechanical noise, no cavitation, only the natural sound of the ocean. The operator switches frequency bands and scans the entire spectrum again. Still nothing. He keys the radio. Negative propulsion noise. Target contact not required. 12 miles away, the three American warships hold their defensive formation. Their sonar arrays remain deployed, sweeping the surrounding water in long, careful arcs as the ships continue moving through the sea. Inside the lead destroyer's combat information center, the tactical display shows the Seahawk circling above the suspected submarine location. The acoustic trails from the incoming weapons are gone now, leaving only faint sonar echoes from the underwater shockwave. The tactical officer watches the screen for several seconds.
Any additional contacts? The sonar operator shakes his head. No new screw noise detected. Another officer checks the long-range acoustic sensors trailing behind the formation. The towed array is quiet. If another submarine were nearby, its propeller signature would likely appear somewhere in the spectrum. But nothing appears. Back inside the Seahawk, the crew deploys 2 more sonobuoys, extending the listening field another mile in every direction. Each buoy splashes into the water and immediately begins transmitting underwater audio back to the aircraft. The operator scans the incoming signals. Still nothing. The submarine that launched the torpedoes has disappeared from the acoustic picture. But no one assumes the situation is over. Submarines are built for silence, and silence can hide almost anything beneath the ocean. 5:29 local time. The Seahawk slowly descends to 150 feet, its rotor wash rippling across the surface below. The pilot positions the aircraft directly above the widening circle of bubbles still rising from the depths. For a moment, the helicopter holds almost perfectly still. The sensor operator activates the forward-looking infrared camera and angles it down toward the water. The system scans for temperature changes, signs of machinery, fuel, or debris reaching the surface. Then a faint patch appears on the screen. Oil. Thin, dark streaks spread slowly across the water. Possible fuel leak, the operator reports.
The Seahawk circles once more, its cameras recording every detail. The video feed streams back to the destroyer, where intelligence officers begin reviewing the footage frame by frame. Below the surface, fragments continue drifting upward from the impact area. Small pieces of metal, insulation. Then one larger panel briefly breaks the surface before rolling back beneath the waves. Inside the destroyer CIC, the captain watches the live feed in silence. Every encounter at sea becomes part of the record. Every radar return, every sonar track, every second of video, stored, reviewed, studied later. 5:32 local time. The Seahawk pilot receives a new instruction. Return to formation. The helicopter banks gently away from the debris field and begins flying back toward the American ships waiting on the horizon. Behind it, the cluster of sonobuoys remains drifting in the water, still listening for any sound that might return from the depths. Nothing does. Within minutes, the Seahawk approaches the lead destroyer. Deck crews are already in position, bright helmets visible as the helicopter descends toward the landing circle. The aircraft settles onto the deck with a heavy thud. The rotors slow. The engines wind down. Inside the Combat Information Center, the sonar team continues scanning the surrounding ocean for nearly 30 more minutes. The formation maintains speed and course, every sensor still active, every operator still listening. But the result does not change. No propulsion noise, no returning contact, no new launch signatures, only empty water beneath the formation. The tactical officer enters the final record of the encounter. 3 torpedoes launched, 3 torpedoes diverted, 1 submarine engaged, target no longer detected. On the bridge, the captain looks out across the ocean through the forward windows. The sea appears calm again. But somewhere far below the surface, the remains of a submarine are descending into the darkness. The entire encounter lasted less than 10 minutes. No warning, no radio call, only a sudden underwater confrontation that unfolded almost entirely through sound. And beneath the waves, in a battlefield no one could see, the outcome was decided before anyone on the surface ever laid eyes on the enemy.